Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome to the course code ENG455, lecture number 27. As you know that from last our two lectures we have started a series of lectures on to discuss the history of linguistics, that how the study of linguistics, how the different schools of thoughts were established, and what were the contributions of some major linguistics in the field of linguistics. So with respect to historical linguistics, we have a lecture number 3 today. What we have done so far with respect to linguistics is that we have discussed that how this history of linguistics, it was established, it was introduced to a new form of study of language, that was the linguistics. Previously the study of language was already there as a discipline, but that was in the form of comparative philology and traditional grammar approach, whereas with the modern linguistics a new approach towards the study of language was introduced. That was about the prelude about the modern linguistics. Then came the structuralism period, the very first school of thought in modern linguistics, and you can say that the structuralism laid foundations for the modern linguistics. The father of modern linguistics, or the father of structuralism, Ferdinand de Saussure, who contributed well to introduce linguistics, to talk about language. And according to him, language itself is a self-regulating and self-enough system. We are not supposed to, if we are going to talk about language, we are not supposed to deal with the language in relation with the other disciplines or other areas of knowledge. Rather, language itself is a complete system, enough to study, enough to deal with in linguistics. That was the first revolutionary type of structuralist theory that was proposed by Ferdinand de Saussure. And after that, the linguists, they actually started taking interest in the study of language. Then we discussed Noam Chomsky with respect to his transformational generative grammar, another big name in the field of linguistics, who contributed well with his theories, syntactic theories. Again, his theories are somehow structural theories, because he also talks about the structure of language. But the only difference is that the Saussure focused on the morphological and phonological syntax of the language, whereas structure of the language, whereas Chomsky focused the syntax structure of the language. So there was a little bit different, but at the same time both of them were dealing with language with a structuralist approach, more focusing on the structure and form of the language. So this tendency, led to reaction, and the reaction was emerged. The reaction developed against the structuralist approach, and then came as a reaction of these structuralist approaches came the functional approach. So today's our lecture would be primarily based on the functionalism, a different school of thought who talks about the functions of language rather than its more focuses on function of language than the structure of language. And the proponent of functionalism, Mac Halliday, a big name. There are other people who worked under this category of functionalism, but Mac Halliday, M.A.K. Halliday, he was the famous one. He is a famous linguist who contributed actively in the field of in functionalism with his systemic functional grammar, a set of different types of grammar which was introduced by Mac Halliday, and it revolutionized the concept of language according with respect to its function. I should make it over here clear that this functionalism is basically considered as a subcategory of the London school of thought in linguistics, but in London school we will see that there are other names. but that we will keep for discussion in another lecture. Today our focus would be only and only Halliday and his contribution in functional linguistics. But before that, we have to see how this functionalism is different from structuralism. Now, functional linguistics versus structuralist linguistics. Actually, the structuralism was already there and functionalism emerged as a new paradigm. Now, what was the basic difference was that structuralism that was already focusing the structure of the language, functionalism emerged as a reaction to focus that when we need to talk about language, we are not supposed to only talk about structure. Function is as well important. So the functionalism, it talks about both structure as well as the functions of language. If you look at the figure, it tells you very clearly that structuralism is all about the structure of language, whereas the functionalism, it talks about both function of the language and structure of the language. So it was a bit more comprehensive type of approach towards the study of language. So to differentiate between functional linguistics versus structural linguistics, what are the different ideas which were in contrast to each other? Number one, according to structural linguistics, language is a linguistic system. Again, if you see the focus of the definition is on the word system, made up of various subsystems from phonological, morphological, lexical to sentences. So the whole language is dealt with respect to its structure of phonological structure, whether it is morphological structure, whether it is lexical structure, or whether it is sentential structure. The structure is the basic primary focus of the structuralism. Then on the other hand, in functional linguistics, language is a linguistic system but also a means for doing things, accepting the both forms of language equally important. That yes, language is a system, but at the same time it is not used as a system, it is actually used for doing things. What we do actually with this language is that we perform different functions. So the concept of function is as well as important as the structure of the language. On the other hand, again in structuralism, each language has a finite number of such structural items. Again, because the Chomsky and Saussure and different other structuralist linguists, they were talking about the structure of language. So if you remember the Chomsky, he said that the language is made up of language is comprised of finite number of rules. And usually the sentences in the language are made up of these finite number of rules. So the number of structural items, they also get finite in number. On the other hand, in functionalism, you can see most of our day-to-day language use involves functional activities, offering, suggesting, advising. They leave their focus from the structure. They do not talk. It doesn't mean that they do not focus structure. Actually, there was already so much research was done on the structure of the language. So accepting that structural perspective, they added their own perspective that language is used for performing actually activities. For example, every day what we are doing, like I am teaching, I am using language to teach you. Similarly, talking to your friends, or advising your friend for certain reasons, or suggesting someone, okay, you should wear today the blue color, now suggesting. So you are using language for different functions, for performing different activities. Would you like to take some tea? Or can you open the door? Command sentences, or you are making requests. Any type of things you are doing, you are involved in certain type of functional activities. So the functional aspect of language is as important as the structural aspect of language. Finally, in structural linguistics, to learn a language means to learn these structural items, to be able to understand and produce a language. So once again, the flaw with the structuralism, that because they are overemphasizing the structure of language or the form of language. So according to them, to learn a language is enough to learn the rules and structures of that particular language, and you will be able to understand that language. But on the other hand, functionalism, to learn a language, in order to be able to do things with it, to perform functions, the learners needs to know how to combine grammatical rules and vocabulary to express different notations like present, future, possibility. I know that what is the structure of present tense, but it's not necessarily that which structure I'm going to use for my day-to-day speech, to perform my different functions. I also need the functional aspect of the language as well to learn a language. Only by knowing the structures and rules of a language, I cannot perform certain types of activities which are associated to that language. So I need the functional language as well. I need to learn the functional aspect of the language as well. So that these are some of the major differences between structuralism and functionalism. Now, as I mentioned that the functionalism, this approach, this school of thought was established by some major linguists as a reaction to structuralism, but the most famous name in this regard is of Michael Alexander Cockburn Halliday. Or simply we are used to call him Mac Halliday for the purpose of simplification, in order to avoid such a big name. So if you can see figure, this is the Mac Halliday, the person who came up with the idea of this functionalism. Now, before going into detail of how the Mac Halliday introduced this aspect of functionalism, let's discuss a brief life history of Mac Halliday. Born 1925 in Leeds, England. So basically he is a British linguist and belongs to 1925. That's why, if you remember, at the very beginning I mentioned that the functionalism itself belongs to the London School. So these are the group of British linguists who established this London School, and Mac Halliday was also considered to be linked with this the group of British linguists known as the London School. 1940, taking his graduation at London University in Chinese language and literature. So when he received his BA degree, his major focus, his major area was Chinese language and literature. So you will see that right from the beginning his focus is his focus of study was on the language aspect. And at Chinese language, such a complicated and complex language that appeals to us. So he started his studies with that language. Then from 1940s to 50s, in between, he studied linguistics as a graduate student. First in China, he started studying this subject in China, Peking University, and then Lingnan University, Canton. And then he came to Cambridge. He settled down in Cambridge, where he received his PhD degree. Masters from Chinese University, but later on from the Cambridge University he received his PhD degree in linguistics. From 1955 to 1963, he was holding certain appointments at Cambridge and Edinburgh. He was holding certain teaching appointments. He was teaching at both universities at the same time, teaching certain courses over here and certain courses over there. From 1963 to 1970, for 7 years, he taught at University College London. Again, linguistics was his major discipline. 1973 to 1975, he taught at the University of Illinois Chicago Circle. 1976 to 2000, for 4 years, he taught at the University of Sydney, Australia. And up to now, after 2000, till now, he is teaching at various universities throughout the world. He is not at all linked with any particular university right now, but actually he visits different countries and he teaches different courses on linguistics in different countries of the world, and especially in Hong Kong, India, Japan, and England, China. These are the countries where he usually goes for delivering his lectures on linguistics, and known as because he is considered as the backbone of linguistics nowadays, having working on so many fields in linguistics like semantics, like functionalism, and different grammatical approaches, as well as the semantic and pragmatic approaches according to the relationship of in the relationship of context and language. These are all the focus of his studies. Now, starting with what functional linguistics is, Mac Halliday, an important figure with this functionalism. Now, inside this functionalism, he is more famous for systemic functional linguistics, a particular type of grammar that he introduced. If you remember, like Chomsky, he belongs to generative linguistics, but he introduced the transformational generative linguistics. Similarly, Mac Halliday is associated with functional linguistics, but his major contribution was that he introduced a new branch of grammar, that is systemic functional linguistics, also known as SFL. So let's see what this is. Systemic functional linguistics is also functional because it considers language to have evolved under the pressure of a particular functions that the language system has to serve. So the thing is, the functions and system both are there related to language. Now there are different language functions that we have to perform, and to perform that language function we need certain language system. For example, if I want to command you, now for performing that action of function of command, I need a particular structure, and I know in English the particular structure for command is that usually it starts with a verb and then the thing, come here, open the door. So starting with the verb plus remaining the object thing is there. So this is the system, this is the pattern of command. So in order to perform my function, I need to use certain structure or system. So functions are therefore taken to have left their mark on the structure and organization of language at all levels. So this shows the function of language is very important, because the structures, they are used to fulfill different functions. They are used to serve different functions. We need to perform different functions, and to perform these functions we need the different structures of language. So again, structures and language both are essential. So from this approach, from this focus on functional aspect of language, the systemic functional linguistics is usually linked with functionalism. What else it says is that, according to this Halliday, the language as a semiotic system. If you remember that with Halliday, the semiotic analysis is very much popular, using his theories of systemic functional linguistics. Actually, the semiotic semiotic analysis is that the Halliday takes language as a semiotic system, not in the sense of a system of science, but a systemic resource for meanings. This is what Halliday says in those systemic perspectives on discourse. So according to as we are saying, that functional as a systemic functional linguistics, it talks about both aspects of language, the functional aspect as well as the structural aspect. But at the same time, it should be clarified that his structure of language is not like the Saussure, the structure of the science. That like Saussure, he is not interested in the structure of science, rather he is more interested in the meanings of these meanings associated to these science. So his that system of science is a language as a structure, or a system of science is actually a resource for getting meanings. Because for different morphological words, I do not, this knowledge is not mean necessary for me to know that okay, that this for this linguistic word, this is the sign and this is the signifier and this is the signified. What I need to know is that okay, what is the meaning of this word, where I can use this word, what are the different meanings that are surrounding this word, how are the different ways I can use this word. So meaning based knowledge of the structure is more important than this sign theory of Saussure. Further, Halliday, page 193, again the same book on systemic perspectives on discourse, he says, so linguistics, because linguistics is talking about the meaning-based structure plus the function. So linguistics is study of how people exchange meanings by languaging. Very popular quotation by Halliday regarding the functional approach, that this is for the purpose of linguistics is not to study the language as a system of set of structures or as a system of structures or as a system of signs, but the basic purpose of the linguistics is to see how the people exchange their meanings, how they make conversations by languaging. Now language is a tool. Language becomes a side tool, that the basic purpose is the communication, the basic purpose is exchange of meaning, and for that purpose they use language as a tool. So languaging a different type of the word, you will see it, you have never seen maybe this word, but Halliday used this word languaging, so calling language as an activity. If you remember, if you look at the structure of this word languaging, making it a verb, showing language as an activity. So by languaging things we communicate, by languaging we communicate, by languaging we exchange meanings, by languaging we set our discourses, by languaging we convey our meanings, and we communicate our social ideas and all these things. So languaging is basically language as activity, a very functional perspective that was introduced by Mac Halliday. Now, typically talking about this systemic functional linguistics of Halliday, there were further ideas. There are certain ideas that were introduced by Halliday in his systemic functional linguistics, and now we will discuss all of these ideas one by one. So we will start from his first idea. Now, what is the first idea in systemic functional linguistics is that according to this approach of SFL, systemic functional linguistics, that the basic focus is what things do, what the different things do, or rather than how the things are composed. Again, the focus from the structure of language to the function of language, how the language is used to perform that different functions, that is important than to know that what the language is composed of. This is the basic perspective, that it is not necessary. Yes, it is helpful to know that what are the structures of language. Definitely that structures help us to perform different functions. So but the major focus, if we divide these two perspectives, that okay, knowing the language structure and knowing how to do things with that language, if we take these two things, then this thing comes first. You should know how to do things with the language before knowing the structure of the language. So this is a structure. So here's the focus. The systemic functional linguistics moves the focus of analysis. If you want to perform certain linguistic analysis, it shifts your attention. The paradigm is shifted from structural informed analysis to function informed analysis. If you look at the figure, the structure informed analysis. Now the structure informed analysis makes you like a handful of rice. If I am performing a structural analysis, I would say a handful of rice is a noun phrase, where the handful is the head of the noun phrase. So this is my idea about this is about structure. But that structure knowing is not that much important. If you look at the below part, that is the functional informed analysis. A handful of rice, according to the functional analysis, it is a quantifier telling you the quantity of rice. So which approach is more knowledge, giving you more knowledge about it, more functional knowledge? Yes, the below, where you are focusing the function of language rather than the structure of the language. Now, second important idea within systemic functional linguistics is that systemic separates choices and structures. Very important idea with respect to Halliday. Now, what is meant by choices and what is meant by structures? The basic idea is that to perform different functions, you make choices of different linguistic patterns. For example, to perform a command action, you have to make a choice that okay, which structure I should use. So choice making is prior to that structure. What become the it is not said okay, all the structures are here, you have to pick one structure to perform an action. No, you have to make choice before for selection of an appropriate structure. So choice comes before the structure. In other words, this speech, that language consists of what choices we make and show to what extent these choices are contextually conditioned. Number one, we need to make choice to perform different functions, and we need to make choice of what? Of different structures to perform that function. Number two, our choice is dependent, contextually conditioned. According to our context, we will choose a structure. For example, if I am in a formal context, if I am sitting in a formal context, sitting in the office of my principal, then what type of setting is there? Formal. And while communicating to the person at the principal seat, I would be using the formal structures of language. So I'm making choices. This is my consciously I'm making choices that to communicate with such person at such seat, I have to make certain choices of the patterns which would reflect the formality of language. But sitting at home, talking with my friends, and informal context is there. So what type of language structures I would use? Informal one. So according to the context is there. The choices are contextually conditioned because I make choice according to the context in which the conversation is going on. And then for that choice, I will choose. What is the choice? Choosing a appropriate structure of language for performing an activity in that context. This is the idea of choice and structure relationship according to Halliday. If we use the words of Halliday, according to Halliday, structure is an output device. Means structure gives you the output. Whatever structure you are using, that is an output. That is the result. That is something you are going to say, and mechanism for expressing the choices that have been made. Before that, mentally you make choices that okay, in this situation, or according to the person or according to the knowledge level, because of the different factors, I will make choice of an appropriate structure that I am going to use to perform a different certain function. And then I will use a structure to make a choice. So the structure is just an output device. For example, to make a request, I have so many ways. Please, if you don't mind, pass me on this salt. Would you like to pass on this salt? Please don't mind and give me that salt. I hope you won't mind passing me that salt. So different, if you see what I'm doing, I'm making a request, I am performing a function with language that is performing, that I am going to make a request. But for that making a request, I have so many structures that I have just exemplified. So for so many structures, and according to my situation, I would choose out of that available structures, I will choose one structure. And that again, that choice would be according to the context. It would be based on context, the type of situation I am in, the type of people I'm talking to, the type of person I am, the type of knowledge that other people have. According to all these settings and situations and a context, I will make a choice. So this way, the choice determines your structure, and the structure is just the output. It is just an output device to produce a language. But before that, you have to give certain input to yourself. Now actually this idea of separating choices from structures was by Halliday was a criticism on Chomsky phrase structure grammar. How? Before that, let me give you a brief introduction of that Chomsky idea. Chomskyan grammars provide sets of rules where choices and structural configurations are mixed together. This was the criticism by Halliday, that the problem with Chomsky is that Chomsky, he according to him, the language is a set of rules. So he makes the speakers bound to that set of rules, and we are bound to choose any structure. So the choice and the structure both are mixed together. There is no distinction between where we make choice and where we use a structure, where we select a structure. Because according to Halliday, the choice is prior to that choose structure. Choice is your mental activity and then you choose a structure. But for Chomsky, both are the same thing. That was a flaw with Chomsky things according to Halliday. And for example, as in the Chomsky said, to generate a sentence, one starts with a symbol, for example, S. So at the top level, we have a sentence, which is at the very first level is divided into verb phrase and noun phrase. Then verb phrase can be divided into verb, noun phrase, prepositional phrase, adverb. Noun phrase can have an article, noun, and so many things. And if you remember the phrase structure grammar that were given by the Chomsky, if you have a deeper study of these phrase structure grammar, you will see that the idea of phrase structure grammar is based on that language structures are already there. Certain language structures, certain fixed set of rules are available to you. You choose structure. So choice and structure becomes one step, and you use them. So for Chomsky, he does not separate this choice from the thing from the structures thing. But on the other hand, the first systemic functional linguistics unit, grammatical unit, it has certain levels. For example, according to Chomsky, the sentence is being divided into phrases and then phrases into different parts. But for Halliday, sentence has clauses, clauses has phrases, phrases has words, and words have morpheme. So a proper structural pattern is there, and the choice of unit is based on meanings that we want to convey rather than the structure. So choice is an initial and different step from structure. We make choice before choosing a structure. So this is the first step in choosing a structure. And the levels of language that Halliday talks about is that first level is unit, second level is structure, third level is class, fourth level is system. So by having these four levels of language, we make a choice and then choose a structure. So look at the figure how this Halliday, it separates choices from the structures. Structural consequences mean the way that you choose the structure. If you remember from Chomsky, the sentence divided into phrases, phrases into parts. But when we perform the analysis with respect to this Halliday, then the grammatical unit, that can be a sentence. So if we have a sentence, we can divide it into three levels. We have a clause level, we have a group level, and we have a word level. Now at clause level, we see what type of clause has been used, whether it is a finite clause or whether it is an infinite clause, non-finite. Then further, whether if it is a finite clause, whether there is a declarative or a negative or interrogative. And if it is infinitive, then we have the present participle hai, or it is a past participle, mean whatever tense according to that we are going to use. If it is group, then the second phase we see what group it is, that group type, what group you are going to use, that again your choice. What group you have used, whether you have used a nominal group, that is a noun phrase, whether you have used an adjectival group or a prepositional group. If it is a nominal group, whether it is a determined one or non-determined one. Mean again, you at different levels, you have to make clear of your choices, that how that sentence that you have produced, the sentence that has been there in a discourse, how that structure of the sentence has been based on making different choices. Before that, how the speaker or the writer has made choice. Similarly, at word level, what words I am going to use for conveying my message. So that sentence that I am going to analyze with respect to systemic functional linguistics is not a primary. It is not simply a set of certain words that are there that I just chose a structure and I randomly arranged the structure and provided you with the sentence. Rather, that sentences has involved a deep mental activity of choice making. I have consciously made choice of the words, which words I'm going to use to say something. I have purposely use certain types of clauses to convey my message, and then purposely use different types of group in my sentence. So one sentence that is mean not that the structure was already there in a language and I just picked that structure to convey my message. That is not that much simple as the Chomsky proposed. Chomsky's theory was making language very much simple, that okay, there are simple structures of the languages. I want to make a command, so the command structure is already there, pick that and convey my message. No. I want to make a request, structure is there, I pick a structure and no. Before doing every single thing, I have to choose which type of command, what would be the context, what would be the level of that according to that I would make certain choices for clauses, for phrases, and that my choices of words would be very much conscious. So language is not that much simple that okay, the structure and choice they are grouped. No, according to Halliday they are separated. You make choices prior to choosing your structure, prior to presenting your structure. So this idea of choice making and structure choice is a backbone of systemic functional linguistics. Now further, according to systemic approach, it allows you to focus on meaningful choices in language. Once again, because the functionalism is concerned with the function that a language can perform, so the choices are not meaningless. Choices are always meaningful. For example, active versus passive. Which structure I'm going to use? John opened the door. The door was opened by John. Which structure would I am going to use? It is my meaningful choice. If I want to stress on the word John, if I want to bring John and highlights, then I will say John opened the door, because now my highlighted area is John opened the door, so I'm using an active structure. But if my focus is on the door rather than on the John, then I will use a passive structure. The door was opened by John. So now the choice of my structure is meaningful, because what meaning I want to convey, what part of my structure I want to focus, I would use structure according to that choice, meaningful choice, and without needing to think of the particular structure that realizes it. Basic tenet: meaning implies choice. Choice determines structure, and meanings implies choice. So again you can develop a hierarchical structure. On the top there is a meaning that you want to convey. For conveying that meaning, you make a choice, and according to that choice you choose a structure. So this is the hierarchical structure between meaning, choice and structure. And a grammar consists of a set of choices or system organized as a tree. Some choices depends on other. For example, voice is a system with two choices, active and passive. What meanings you want to convey will be represented through your choice. Again, as I exemplified, that it depends on you, that what meaning you want to convey. According to the meaning you want to convey, you make your choice. So this is the basic tenet of meaning, choice and structure relationship in systemic functional linguistics. Now we will move to another area in systemic functional linguistics. Another basic tenet in systemic functional linguistics is of meta functions of language. Another great idea by Halliday. According to Halliday, language performs several functions. And on the basis of this idea, Halliday identifies three meta functions of the language. Not only the functions, rather the meta functions of language. And he named these meta functions as ideational meta function, interpersonal meta function, and textual meta function. And they have the subtitles like ideational meta function field, interpersonal meta function tenor, and the textual meta function as mode. So let's see what these meta functions are and how they get meaning with respect to the context. To understand these meta functions, to understand the understanding of context is important. Now, how we can understand the context? Look at the figure. Look at the figure clearly. Look at the dialogue. The lady, she is saying, she's going to say, she's talking on the phone, when I got home last night, I could not believe what Dash had done. What Dash had done. What choices are possible? Think about the different choices. What my husband had done. What the silly maid had done. What the poor dog had done. What my son had done. What Lala had done. What Aunt Jane had done. Many, many choices are there. And which choices would suit? You cannot tell, okay, this choice would be much better by just looking at the picture. Which choice would be more suitable depends upon the actual context. What had actually happened in the figure. What actually had happened in the house of that lady that she is going to tell to her friend. So we cannot judge. With the help of this picture, we cannot make a choice of anything that can perfectly fit at this situation, because we do not have a knowledge about the situation. Because we do not know what is the actual context was there, what had happened. Because I can guess certain that, okay, certain choices that are possible, like the silly maid, maybe her maid, she has done something silly, so she is going to tell her friend that I couldn't believe what the silly maid had done, or might be her son had done something wrong, so I couldn't believe what Jack had done. Or maybe it's her husband, that I couldn't believe what this idiot man had done. I'm sorry, but I mean using the different. It all depends upon the context. I am not clear what would be the most appropriate choice over here. So again, the choice is context dependent. My choice of the words, what I'm going to say, what things would fill over here, that choice is depend on the context. And the answer of choice, the choice of answer depends on context. What had happened? Relationship. What is the relationship between speaker and addressee? If they are, they are very close friends, then their level of communicating, they would be using such words like silly and stupid and these things. And if their level is a formal level, a lady talking to her officer or something like that, then the formality level would develop another type of different. You won't be using the words like silly or stupid and these. You would be using some polite words. So again, the relationship is there important, context is important, attitude to the thing or person. Now what mean the attitude? The attitude of the person who had done, what is the lady attitude to him? If that is the maid, definitely her attitude would be mean the other way. If something has been done by her husband, then the attitude would be different. If something has been done by her son, then the attitude would be different. So attitude is also important. And finally, mode of communication is important, whether it is formal communication or it is informal communication. So what is implied about what a language system has to encapsulate? Language has to encapsulate the culture, context, genre, topic, relationship and mode. All these things are important for making choices. Let's see another example. What is implied about what a language system has to encapsulate? These are the things that I mentioned on one side: the culture, genre, topic, relationship, mode. These all things, they help us to determine, to make choice of certain structures. What is the culture? What is the accepted culture in our country? I need to make choices according to my specific context and culture. Genre, what is the specific purpose of the text? How is it organized to achieve this? For example, whether it is an argumentative essay, whether it is a descriptive essay, whether it is a narrative essay, what kind of genre you have selected, whether it is a story writing or you want to express yourself through the poems. You have to pick a genre. Then topic, what is being discussed, written about. Relationships, who is talking, who is the nature, what is the nature of their relationship, what are their statuses and roles, and finally the mode, whether it is spoken, written or multimodal form of communication. So all these things you have to keep into mind before making choices. Now another example to get it more clearly, look at the following example once again. This is a piece of dialogue. Let me read it. A, yes please. B, can I have those two? A, yes, one's for 45, one's 25. And have you got dash dash dash? Yes, how many would you like? I'll take two. Right, that's $4.20 altogether. Here you are. Thank you, thank you. What is the context of the text? Guess something. Shop. Good. There's definitely from the communicating. Okay, from the actually from where you get this idea of context. That's $24 altogether. Mean the money. So it means a person is buying something. Person B is buying something. Person A is asking for the money. So it is a shop context. I mean where the two people they are buying or selling some things. What kind of a text is it? Genre. A dialogue. What is it about? Shopping. Who is involved? The customer and the seller. Mode of communication. Informal dialogue. So according to these things, this is the way out of the text or out of the discourse you analyze, you get your field, you get your tenor, you get your mode. You get what is the topic, what is the context, what is the mode of communication. All these things they provide you with field, tenor and mode. The three meta functions of language according to Halliday. So the last three questions determine, in the previous example they determine meta functions separately. Now we can examine these three meta functions. Ideational meta functional, what that is called field. It is the function for construing human experience. It is the means by which we make sense of reality. Halliday divides the ideational meta functions into further two types of meta functions, logical and experiential. The logical meta functions refers to the grammatical resources for building up grammatical units into complexes. Mean to convey your message you use certain linguistic items. And for experiential functions it refers to grammatical resources involved in construing the flux of experience through which you want to convey that flux of experience. Overall, this ideational meta function reflects the contextual value of field. That is the nature of the social process in which the language is implicated. Mean in which the context of that language that is focused, that is called field, is focused in ideational meta function. Then we have interpersonal meta function, that is known as tenor. The interpersonal meta function relates to text aspects like tenor, like interactivity. How the text itself is interactive. Like field, tenor comprises of three components like the speaker, writer, persona. Who is the speaker, who is the writer. Social distance, what are their social statuses of the speaker and the listener. And a relative social status mean how much that social status is relative. These things are important with respect to interpersonal meta function. And finally, with textual meta function, that is known as mode, the textual meta function relates to the internal organization of communicative nature of the text. According to the context, what kind of discourse you are going to use. Mean textual interactivity element is there, like spontaneity, communicative distance. Like you are going to use a dialogue form or a formal type of discourse or informal type of dialogue or a written text or a visual text. Mean anything that comes under the category of mode. So these are the three meta functions of language that are performed by language according to Halliday. If you want to know more about these meta functions, you can have a detailed study of Mac Halliday book, An Introduction to Systemic Functional Linguistics. That book is very much helpful, available in majority of the libraries. In there you will see that how he in detail has discussed these three meta functions of language. And one thing before that I should mention over here, that these meta functions, systemic functional analysis, is getting very much popular nowadays. So because with the help of this analysis, metafunctional, by determining the meta function, you can judge, you can analyze the text. And to analyze the text with respect to different ways, with respect to this ideational or interpersonal or communicative meta function, you can analyze at any level. and the proper techniques are mentioned over there. How for the interpersonal metafunction you separate theme, rhyme, given from the new, or you separate mean actually modality from the other part. So mean for all three levels of metafunction you analyze the text at three different levels. You separate the different parts of the text language, and then you get a better understanding of that this systemic approach. So I would refer you to go to any library. Book is McHaliday, An Introduction to Systemic Functional Linguistics. I would also provide you in the book list and in the reference as well, but I would suggest you to go through it. Now moving because our focus is just to whatever the things that the McHaliday suggested, so we are just highlighting the major areas inside his systemic functional linguistics theory. Now number fourth area in systemic functional linguistics is the importance of context that the Halliday talks about. According to Halliday, the context of the language is at the top level of communication. If you look at this figure, inside the language is the inner part. The inner triangle shows the language, where there is tenor, modal, field, all these things are there, but inside the inner part, that is language. That language is inside register. The register is inside the genre, and that all is inside the culture or the situation. So situation is determining the context. The culture is determining the context. So context is the top level of communication. Mean when you have use certain type of language, the language is actually inside that context. To understand the value of context, look at these figures. Now, as I said, that language has meanings in relation with the context at different levels. Now look at these different pictures inside this. There is a door, there is a dragon, there is a person on this world map. What these all figures they stand for? What do they mean? Why can we make meanings from them? And do they mean same to everyone? These are my questions according to these figures. That what do they mean? Do I get the same meaning as anybody else belonging to any other culture would get the meaning? Think about these things. I am giving you some minutes. Then we will discuss. Observe the things minutely. Look at the door. Getting any meaning? What are the possible meanings for this image of door? Number one. Yes, it is simply a door. Number two. The design of the door is showing you that the door does not belong to any normal door category. This door belongs to certain architectural period. Might be it belongs to a Mughal era, might be it belongs to certain other architectural era, because the pattern, the design of the door is not the normal one. Number three, another meaning. The closed door. What does it mean? Closed door, the end of possibilities, showing me that there is nothing beyond me. There is nothing for me in future. The possibilities are end. So mean different meanings, and it depends according to my situation. That what, for example, for an architecture or a student of architecture, the pattern would be important. The design, the era to which it belongs. To a poet, to a futuristic, the door symbolizes the end of possibilities, the end of future. To a person normal like me belongs to that this is just a door. So according to the person, according to the context, the meanings are getting changed. Look at the second figure, dragon. For me, for Pakistani culture, it is just a dragon. But what about the Chinese culture? If you have seen on the National Geographic, Chinese dragons, they have a year of dragons. When they celebrate these their festivals, they have the kites in the dragon shape, and they have these figures like in dragon shape. In their religion, in their culture, this symbol of dragon is very much important. It has certain meanings in their culture, but in my culture it doesn't have any meaning. So again, the meaning is changing from the one thing is there, but the meaning is changing from one culture to another culture. Now the man on the world. Yes, the man on the top of the world, man ruling the world, man is successful. These are the meanings that I am getting. So again, what I want to tell you that the things are same, but they mean differently to different people, because according to the context, according to the situation, according to my knowledge level, according to the people whom I am communicating, these all things, they determine the context. So language is just a part of that culture, that context. Language reflects, language choices are made according to the context. That is the basic tenet of systemic functional linguistics. So as I mentioned, all of these pictures, they have different meanings for different contexts that we can interpret. Why visuals are meaning making systems dependent on context. Reading is a dynamic process involving author, text as well as reader. And some visuals also have genres or topic, thus we can say, to conclude, language is also a meaning making system, and it too may be influenced by culture and context. Again, the functional aspect of the language as well as the context, the value of context is considered important in systemic functional linguistics. Now further, what else Halliday says? In systemic functional linguistics, not only the context is important, because the appropriateness of linguistic option is conditioned by the current context of situation. So not only the context, current context of situation is important. According to my current context, I would use language. And and what is the context of the situation? The situation in which the language event unfolds, at least those parts of situation which condition that language use. For example, if you look at the figures, student talking to teacher, what are the different possible structures that he can use? Request? Yes. Statement? Yes. Command? No. Because the context is that a student is talking to a teacher. So in that context, in that current context, the student cannot command teacher. So this structure is impossible in this, according to this current situation. So this way, the language choices are made according to the context, in which we want to communicate. Now again, Halliday models context of situation, those aspects of the context relevant to the unfolding language event. Again, field, tenor, mode. Ideational metafunction, interpersonal metafunction, and the third one. Field, what is being talked about. Tenor, the people involved in the communication. Mode, what part of the language is playing in the interaction. For example, all of the action, what form does it take. For example, it is a spoken mode or it is a written mode. Look at the example. For example, I have a recipe book. What is the field of a recipe book? Cooking. Definitely, the way the ingredients are there in the process of preparing food, they all show me that this recipe book belongs to the field of cooking. Tenor. So tenor, who is going to write that book? Definitely, a recipe book won't be written by a normal cook like me. It would be written by an expert cook. So the expert writer of that book would be a cook, a perfect cook. So who is tenor? Who is communicating? A good cook with the learners. I would buy a recipe book when I want to learn the recipes, when I want to learn cooking. So I am the learner. On the other side, there is the expert cook. So this is the tenor who are communicating. And finally, what is the mode? The mode of the recipe book is, if I am getting it in the book form, definitely it is a written mode. And if I am watching it on the television, like watching Masala channel, then it is the visual mode. Again, the recipes, the cooking field is there, the same tenor, same field, but the different mode, that is visual or that is spoken. So this way the modes are important. And finally, another important idea by this Halliday's of stratification in language. Again, the language, it works on different levels, and these levels are known as strata. If you remember, in stratificational grammar is something same way. It talks about the strata of language the same way the Halliday talks about the stratification in language. And according to him, language is actually a semiotic system, and it has levels, it has stratas. It has a meaning strata, it has a words and structure strata, and it has the sounds or letter strata. The sounds and letter strata relates to phonology and graphology. The words and structure level, it refers to lexicogrammar level, and meanings is related to semantics. Strata 1, semantics, where you want to communicate in language to convey certain meaning. And with respect to semantics, the field, tenor and mood are very important. With respect to field, the way we use language to represent our experience. Interpersonal relationship, the way we use language to interact with others. And textual relation to mode, the way we use language to organize our spoken or written text. So these all things are important to convey our meaning, and that is the focus of semantics. In Strata 2 we have lexico-grammar. Lexico, word, grammar, the structure. So both the structure of the words and the structure of the sentences is focused at the second strata, and it concerns the syntactic organization of words into utterances. It involves analysis of utterances in terms of roles like actor, medium, theme, moods, called lexicogrammar, to emphasize that it is words and their combination to make sentences. Again, the name makes it clear. And then we have Strata 3, phonology, graphology. Phonology, where the phone is the single sound, the way we pronounce things, the way the oral sounds are communicated, and graphology, the way written sounds are communicated, the written words, the written symbols, they are organized to create words. And that language unfolds syntagmatically, a structure laid down in time and space. So this way we have 3 stratas to describe the language. And then if I summarize all these 3 strata, then systemic model of language strata is that if you look at the green part of this figure, inside that language there is semantics, meaning level, grammar, wordings level, and phonology, morphology, the spellings level. And that language is all in the blue part, that is the context. So this is the summary of the language, with respect to different strata. Hope this lecture is going to help you a lot in understanding the functional approach towards the linguistics, how this functional approach emerged, what were the basic tenets of functionalism, and especially how the Halliday contributed in this field of functional linguistics with his theoretical perspectives on what language is, what it composed of, and more importantly, what are the meta functions of language. The ideational, the interpersonal, these functions, field, tenor and mode, they are very much important with respect in determining the analysis of language. Then the value of context. We cannot ignore the value of context for our making our language choices, for choosing our language structures, or to convey our meaning. And inside that context, we have the language in stratas, 3 stratas form. The lowest level is of phonology and graphology, where we are concerned with the spellings. Now these are the phonemic spelling or the morphemic spelling. Then we have the lexicogrammar strata, where we are how the words are there and how the words are grouped together to form sentences. And then we have the semantic strata, where we are concerned with the meaning. So these were some of the ideas of Halliday, Halliday's systemic functional linguistics, a very well-known school of linguistics with respect to functionalism, a different approach towards linguistics. So that was all about Halliday and his functional approach today, and inshallah we are going to discuss in next 2 weeks some more important linguists and the schools with respect to history of linguistics, and we will try to cover all them and finish them by next lecture. So see you till the next lecture. Allah Hafiz.